The last speaker of the day is Berit Brandth, and as Emma said this morning, we're very delighted that Berit has joined us all the way over from Norway to especially come and speak to us today. Berit has published extensively in the areas of fatherhood and gender and masculinity and care policies in relation to family life. She has published over 25 academic journal articles in the area, and she's also published 6 books too, so she's been a very busy lady. One of the reasons that Berit has been positioned towards the end of the session in the lead up to the panel debate is that obviously Norway has a much more established and, dare I say, better compensated flexible parenting system for leave regulations, I guess. So it's been established in Norway, the kind of father's quota, over 24 years ago. And in that period, there's been an awful lot of changes that have taken place within that policy. So it'd be very interesting from the context of the UK to hear about some of the changes in Norway. So Berit's presentation is titled The Norwegian Parental Leave System for Fathers, Progress and Pitfalls.
Okay.
Oh, and sorry, just before we do go, the fire alarm will go off at 3:10, so don't be alarmed. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to this event. I have been interested in parental leave research for many years, particularly parental leave for fathers, which I have studied with my colleague Elin Kvande. So we have done this work together. And today I thought I would give you a general impression of the Nordic, mostly Norwegian parental leave system, and also some experiences or results from our work. This is a very dynamic area of study. It changes the whole time. So when we publish articles, the next year it may be outdated concerning the length of the leave or the eligibility rights or whatever. But parental leave is one of the most active areas of social policy in Western societies, and many countries are looking to the Norwegian countries to hear their experiences. For we have had parental leave for a long time, almost since the Viking era. No, but when I saw this cartoon, I thought I would bring it today as an example of cultural exchange, because the Viking boss getting ready to go on a raid, perhaps to the British Isles, he says, "Where is Halvdan Skullbreaker, Bjarte Berserk, and Egil Manslaughter?" And he says, "They're on daddy leave." So, well, the Nordic countries are similar and different. Similarity in the direction they are moving towards still the dual earner, dual carer model. No. Yeah. Just a short sketch of the important milestones of the parental leave system in Norway. Maternity leave we have had since the beginning of last century. In 1909, it was decided that mothers should not work 6 weeks after giving birth, and this was paid leave. This was extended in 1947 to 12 weeks, still a maternity leave, but a most important year is 1978, where what was totally new was that fathers could share the leave, 12 weeks of the leave. And this was in the 1970s, and it was gender equality was very high on the agenda. But it's important that maternity leave as a special right for women was abolished with this law. And it signaled a new political view of men's responsibility in the family. After that, there were several smaller extensions of the leave. But the next milestone was in 1993, when the father's quota was passed. The father's quota was then 4 weeks of earmarked, non-transferable leave for fathers, based in law. It was passed because after 15 years of having shared parental leave, nothing much had happened. Fathers didn't take leave. Mothers took the whole leave. And they realized that we needed something stronger. So despite this joint entitlement, we needed a special right for fathers. Before the father's quota was introduced, we did an interview study in my hometown, which is the second largest city in Norway, of all the fathers who had used shared parental leave. And it was 10 men, 10 persons. So it only increased from 1% to 4% during the 15 years before 1993. But after the father's quota was passed, it was a different story. The father's quota, it was agreed upon politically at that time. It was totally new weeks, fresh weeks, so we didn't have the discussion about fathers taking leave from mothers. So the father's quota was a success. Which one? That one. It has worked well to get fathers to take leave. It rose from 5 to 7% of all fathers for the first 5 years after the introduction. And after that, it has stabilized on 90%. So just a recent study last year confirmed that 91.4% of all fathers in Norway take the father's quota. Take all of it, more of it, or little less. And every time the quota has been prolonged, and it has regularly over the years, fathers have increased their take-up accordingly. And it's popular. Surveys show that it's supported by the general population, by parents, by the social partners and working life. As a matter of fact, the Federation of Norwegian Employers are very active in promoting the father's quota. But it's politically contested. The conservative side of the political spectrum are not in favor of it, but the left side, as a matter of fact, the Social Democratic government did all the extensions. Well, the Nordic countries have followed similar trajectories of development, like the Norwegian one. Not exactly the same years, but definitely inspired by each other's. And all the countries were pioneers in developing paid maternity leave. And also in the 70s and 80s, they passed laws on shared parental leave.
We've got it plugged in, but the plug not switched on, so it's actually out of battery. But,
okay.
So we're just logging in, but you're doing brilliantly.
And in all the countries, the number of weeks have increased the past years. And also the countries have pioneered with introducing special rights for fathers. All the Nordic countries, except Denmark, now have fathers' quotas, special quotas for fathers, to ensure that fathers take more leave. And Norway was the first country to introduce it, followed 2 years later by Sweden, then Denmark, who had it for 4 years and then took it away again. Iceland passed their father's quota legislation in 2000. And Finland had a different system for many years, but in 2013 they had a father's quota, the one before. No. The one before this one. Up. Yeah. Okay. So this is an overview of the total number of weeks in the Nordic countries. You can see they are fairly similar in length, and the father's quota weeks, which are also quite similar. Norway had 14 weeks some years ago, but the conservative government reduced it. It's a shame. So this is an overview of today's parental leave in Norway. We have 49 or 59 weeks of total parental leave, 59 weeks if you decide 80% wage compensation instead of 100%. Then there is the mother's quota and the father's quota of 10 weeks. And maternity leave was extended to before the birth. So mothers have to take 3 weeks before birth. They have to stop working 3 weeks before the expected date. In addition, we have paternity leave of 2 weeks. It's not part of the parental leave system because it's not paid by national insurance. It's collective agreements and it's paid. It's the employer who pays it if the company has a collective agreement. So you can see that the leave consists of many parts with different kinds of objectives. This was up this morning. Health considerations for mother, gender equality, the dual earner, dual carer objective of the shared parental leave, and then the father-child relationship, which is in focus with the father's quota. But these are the Norwegian objectives. But if you go to other countries and if you hear ministers talking about what they want to accomplish if they pass laws on parental leave, it's a lot more. I heard an EU minister talking about this, and he mentioned they expected economic growth from it, increased employment for women, more equal sharing of family work, increased fertility, work and home reconciliation, a whole lot of objectives. But many of these objectives are often contradictory, which I shall mention later. Eligibility in Norway is based on employment. Both parents have to earn the right to parental leave. Well, not much to say in that. Sweden, for instance, has eligibility based on citizenship. So many more are included, but that means that what they are paid is very differentiated. In Norway, everybody are compensated by their wage. So this is a picture of men's take-up of the total share of the total parental leave days in the Nordic countries. 2 years, 1995 and 2015. And we can see how the 3 countries, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden, which have the father's quota, also have the highest uptake among fathers. Finland we are expecting Finland to raise. Denmark is low. They don't have a father's quota, but they have some companies give leave to fathers. It's also interesting that Iceland and Norway, the uptake, it matches exactly the length of the father's quota in terms of the share of the total days. Sweden is a bit different, but probably Swedish fathers use more shared parental leave. I don't know. The eligibility, the flexibility of leave in Sweden is different. It's very flexible. You can take this leave until the child turns 12 years old, which means that very few fathers in Sweden use their leave in the first year. So this might be one reason why they have a different pattern. But why does parental leave, the father's quota, work so well when it comes to having fathers take leave? And we have looked at the design elements of the quota. First of all, that it is based in law. It's important that fathers can claim right, which they are legally entitled to. Also, it's very important that it is individual, that it is earmarked for fathers. It makes fathers feel ownership to this leave. And they tend to regard it as just like another worker right, like holidays and sick leave and pension rights. So, and also their importance as fathers and care persons are recognized when it's individual. It's almost like it's changing symbolically, it's changing the idea of the ideal worker, that is now has this leave entitlement attached to it. It's a motivating factor also that it is non-transferable to the mother. If it isn't non-transferable, if it hadn't been, the father had left it and not taken it, they would have lost important time to be with the child for themselves, but also the child would have lost time to be cared for by their parents. And in Norway, parental care during the first year is a strong norm. Like we don't have nannies. Parents don't employ nannies in Norway to look after their children. At least not the first year. It's also very important that it is generously paid, that the family's economy is not endangered by the law. The fathers uphold their wages during parental leave. They are still keeping the identity as a worker and a breadwinner. So much research in Norway has pointed out or has documented that, or concluded is the right word, that parental leave for fathers has become a norm and a game changer for fathers. It has changed what fathers do when they become fathers. They take leave. It's a moral obligation. It would have been more of an issue if I hadn't taken it, one of our interviewees said. So it's more a stigma attached to not taking the leave than to taking it. And I thought I'd illustrate this change of the game by a story. It was on a recent blog, but it was picked up by one of the Norwegian newspaper, and it was written by a mother of a 2-year-old daughter who observed, she was taking her daughter to ballet lesson, and she observed the other parents at this course and described how about half of the parents were fathers. And they had, this course started at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so fathers couldn't work late. They had to go to the kindergarten and pick up the child. They had to change her clothes, put on a ballet costume, and drive to the place where the course was taken. And she describes how the parents have to do what the children are supposed to do, as part of the instruction. So she describes how the fathers lift their head, and they stretch their wrist, and they stand on their toes, and they draw circles on the floor with their foot. And the article was called, "I Love Norwegian Fathers." So it seems like these fathers have taken leave for 2.5 months, and they seem to have become comfortable with this sort of thing. Yeah. So also working life is important in explaining why so many fathers take leave, and it is accepted by working life. In our interview study of 40 fathers who had taken leave, none of them reported that they have experienced problems at work. And this is contrary to expectations, really, where working life in many reports seem to be the most important hindrance to taking leave. And the reason these fathers, the reason they gave to explain this was related to the design of the leave. They said that the way the quota was constructed, as based in law, earmarked and forfeited if not used, was important for how it was used and practiced in working life, and for how employers regarded. They believed it would have been regarded differently if it had been subject to choice. Yeah. So the design reduced company resistance and career risks that would otherwise might have been a problem. And one of the interviewees, he said he was originally from Spain and expected that taking leave would endanger his career. So he said, "I knew we were not supposed to have problems at work, but I was a little concerned whether that was actually true, because sometimes things look good on paper, but it may be that you get some problems. But I had no problems, and I felt really privileged I could have the leave." I don't know, but I think this has to be seen in connection with a Norwegian model of working life, which I'll very briefly say that Norwegian companies, Norwegian working life is very used to regulations. And on the macro level, there is a tripartite cooperation between employers, employees, and the state in making laws and regulations. And on the micro level, on the workplace level, there is this informal participation between employers and employees. And it's called the micro democracy. It was just the other week, there was a conference in Oslo on the Nordic model of working life with international commentators like Richard Sennett. So it seems to me it might be something special about it. But there are mutual recognitions of rights and obligations. When employers support fathers' leave-taking, fathers are loyal and committed in return. One example from our data, committed employers in return. This concerns an informal time adjustment between work and home. It's not like father just from day one just leave the workplace and don't bother to take care of their what they leave. So this father, an architect working in a very small company, he owned the data skills in the firm. So he says, they called and asked for assistance sometimes. We agreed on that, it's okay, but I told them to limit it as much as possible, and they are very good at it, I think. They called mostly in the beginning of my leave, as there were matters they had forgotten to ask me about. But later they have been good at refraining from calling. And it's important to me, because I don't want to think too much about my job when I'm home on leave. So fathers take care not to leave their workplaces in the lurch. Okay, over to this. This was all the positive elements of the leave and how it works so wonderful, and fathers take leave and norms are changing and all that. But there are pitfalls. It also concerns the design of the leave. Because one thing is taking, how many fathers take leave and all that, but what do they do when they take leave? What's the content of this leave? I think that's equally important question. So there are particularly two pitfalls. The one it concerns the opportunity to take leave, be home on leave at the same time, and the other one is flexible design of the leave in terms of part-time leave, or you can split it up and take it in blocks. In Norway, you can take it until the child reaches 3 years old. Iceland and Finland until the child reaches 2, and in Sweden 12. Yeah. So we did a survey, and we noticed that about half and half, 53% of the fathers were home alone. Mothers went back to work full time. These fathers took the whole quota and a little more, often continuous leave. On the other hand, there were 47% who took leave while the mother was home on a full-time or part-time basis at the same time. And these fathers reduced their leave or split it up. There are similarities between these two groups. They take leave from work in order to care for their child, and they define themselves as involved fathers. But we noticed completely different care practices in the two situations. So we saw that caring for a baby alone influenced the fathering practices in significant ways. First of all, fathering alone allowed them to develop care competence. They develop a sensitivity to the children, and they became confident in reading the small children. They have to interpret the wordless language of these small children when they interact with them. One father said, she would come up and grab the table, and I knew that meant she was hungry. And moreover, the experiences where that infant care demanded slow time. in terms of you couldn't do many other things. You had to immerse yourself practically and emotionally in the child. The not home aloners, they became supporting players. When the mother has been having been pregnant, having given birth, stayed home for 9 months, and then are home while you, as a father, take leave, it's sort of to be expected that she remains the boss and you help her out as a father when she's still there. So they became a supporting person. They said they were more confident with older children, when children learn to speak. And one of them said that the mother asked him, "Can't you see he's thirsty?" And he said, "I can't see it because I'm not with him all the time." So that's the wordless language they have to interpret. And these fathers put more priority to work and to what we can call fast time. So the effects of the father quota on father practices and gender equality are absolutely greatest when the fathers are home alone. So the not home aloners, they believe they can, arrange for the children to, in between work and mothers. So it becomes a completely different type of care. So it's being home alone that facilitates this transition from being mother's helper to being a more equal co-parent. And many of the fathers, they expressed that they had become empowered as a father by staying home alone and having the responsibility on a daily basis. And it also made them appreciate more what mothers have done. They saw the hard work of childcare. If you're interested in reading about fathers' experiences on leave alone, this newly published book has articles about fathers on leave alone from many countries. It's edited by Margaret O'Brien and Karen Wall. Okay. The next pitfall, flexibility, flexible leave. When the father's quota was introduced, it was not flexible. It had to be taken during the first year. It had to be taken in one block. In 2007, when the father's quota had been extended, become longer, it was decided to make it flexible. It can be taken now as part-time leave in combination with work. It can be split up in blocks of time and used over a longer period of time. And flexible use has increased among fathers taking the father's quota. 25% of fathers take their father's quota as part-time leave. And there is no record of how many split it up. But in total, it's much higher, you can believe. We intuitively believe that flexible leave is an advantage, like flexible working may be. But it isn't. Our findings shows that there are problems with this. It causes interruptions, stress, postponing, splitting it up in days or half days or hours does something with the content of the leave, of the parental leave days. It means fathers in and out of care. And fathers on flexible leave think they can plan the workday and fit childcare into some slots of time here and there. So Actually, work comes to dominate, and it destroys the slow time and the opportunity to take care responsibility. And not the least, it's stressful. One of the fathers was an engineer. He said he didn't envision that there would be so much stress, because I was actually also at work at the same time as leave.
It's early.
5 minutes early.
Shall we?
Just,
Let's just give it another minute.
it should go off in a sec. We'd perfectly time this to be during the break.
Yeah, there you
but
go.
then
Yeah.
perfectly time
Okay.
ourselves.
Should I
Yeah,
continue?
please do.
Okay, yeah. So it became two things that were really sort of halfway, he says, and it was not a good solution. And another one said, Monday I went to work, Tuesday I was home, Wednesday I went to work again, and like this. You felt that when you were at work you were always lagging behind. It simply didn't work. It was a horrible lesson to learn. Really, having such a part-time setup. In my job, customers call early and late. Mail pops in, inquiries come in. I muted the phone eventually, and then I saw 13 unanswered calls, and there were texts. So really not a good situation. And work tends to dominate. I took 1 week to start with, but then there was always something bother that I needed to go back to work for. And they were always proposing that I could work half days and so on. It really got messy. So part-time leave works against developing care competence, just like home alone, not home alone does. It produces a double stress, actually, and it promotes halfway fathering. So watch out for flexibility. It is leave quotas with limited flexibility that seems more effective for fathers when it comes to fence off work and get time to care for children. The effects of the father quota are difficult to measure. So I have a very sober conclusion here. We know that earmarked non-transferable leave for fathers works when it comes to get fathers to take leave, but it's not a catch-all, like all the goals that they hoped for would happen. It does not catch all fathers. In Norway, even though 90% take it, 10% don't. And these 10% are the highly paid, highly educated managers, professionals on the one end, and on the other end it is lower educated with lower pay, who are not established well enough in the labor market, in their work situation, who feel their work might be at risk. And it does not catch all aspects of gender equality. As you know, gender equality can be measured in many different ways. The father's quota does not close the gendered pay gap. It does not necessarily strengthen women's careers or decrease gender segregation in the labor market. But it may, depending on how it is used, it may increase fathers' involvement in childcare and their care competence, and it may strengthen father-child relations. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.